All right, so let's review assignment 1. So this will be very similar to what you guys have already seen. So we're going to create a baseline building using AutoCAD that will serve as the foundation for your sustainable retrofit project. For this assessment, you will produce the following drawings within model space. You're going to do a building footprint, which is a plan view, and a site plan. We're also going to include basic elevations. So this will come in a .wg file. I do not need a PDF, just a drawing file. General requirements. So start with the provided AutoCAD template. All drawings will be drawn in model space and must be scaled, dimensioned, and neatly annotated. Scale is 1:1. So in model space, just make sure you keep it 1:1. Don't scale it. We're going to use Google Earth to assist you with drawing the layout. This will be shown in class. So this will be done in after this video. Insert provided blocks for windows, doors, mechanical schematic, and annotation tags. So I've created already a drawing package that has some windows and doors blocks already. You can copy and paste those in. And again, you're going to submit this as a single .wg file with your initials. For the building footprint plan view, select the building in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Again, this process will be covered in class. Look for one floor smaller buildings that are less than 8,000 square feet. Most students found success with kind of a 3,000, 4,000 square foot building. It doesn't matter the size, doesn't matter really the location, but we are looking at somewhere in Fredericton. Draw the footprint. So you're going to create the footprint of the building using color blue. So that just means tracing around the outside of the building. Once I show you how to load that up into Google Earth. And then you're going to set the wall size as 2 feet. We don't really know what the wall size of each building is going to be, so just offsetting by 2 feet gives you a pretty good indication of what a normal commercial building is, and that's what we use when we do the footprint. Dimensions. So add perimeter dimensions using appropriate dimensions. This basically means that you're just going to use the length and the width for the dimensions of the building. Appropriate meaning that keep it in feet and inches, or you can do metric and millimeters. Those would be the two that I would like to see. Clearly label overall length and width of the building. So again, that's for the perimeter. Provide the total area of the plot. So when you finish your actual plot of the building, meaning the whole footprint, so that includes the building itself, you'll have the square footage of that building. Label roadways, streets around the building. This is important to help me understand where this is located. So any major streets, if there's only one street, for example, if you're on Prospect Street, or Main Street on the north side, you can just label that. But any side streets, it's helpful for me to know where this building is located. And then add a north arrow to the site. So somewhere in the model space, just make sure that there's a north arrow indicating which direction is which. Doors and windows on the plan view. So insert provided door blocks and window blocks. Position windows and doors in the approximate locations as the building. Laying these out is trickier than it may appear, but I'll show you some tricks on how you can put these in. Draw a site plan in AutoCAD showing clearly identifiable parking lot and sidewalks. So just making sure that when you have your building, but also you're showing basically infrastructure around that site as well. For the elevations, use building section bubbles 1 to 4 to show each side of the plan view and include height and width of each side of the building. All right, so make sure you do the dimensions. Window locations and sizes. So wherever you have a window, just making sure that the sizes are shown. Door locations as well. Typically doors for commercial are going to be 36 inches or 3 feet. So I think it's 900 millimeters about if you're doing metric. So that's kind of a standard size for commercial. Making sure that the roof line is shown. So if you cannot see the side of the building, so if you cannot actually physically see what the roof line is, make sure you just ask. But most buildings, if there's a flat roof, probably has a parapet of some kind, but usually you can see that now with Google Earth. You can zoom right in. Making sure that you draw the siding. So if it has a brick, or if it's got a vinyl, or if it's got steel cladding, just making sure that siding is shown. The next video I'll show will be opening up and show you how to get started. Okay, so let's take a look at assignment 1 and how to put it together. So on Brightspace, my suggestion how to start is on the left-hand side, you go into templates and you download SBC-1-template, right? So it's the CAD file. You can download that. I'm just going to point out a couple things that I pointed out in the instructions. So underneath here, there's some blocks you can download, right? Those have windows and doors that you can get. This is another file that myself, Dominique, and Scott have put together over the years. It's a great file. It basically shows a lot of the stuff that you guys want to do for starting up a drawing. Things like layers, line types, text heights, that sort of stuff. So by starting with SBC-1, you have a lot of the stuff, but it may not be complete. And so reviewing this this file, going through and making sure that you have everything set up that you want. And you probably have this done in senior project, but if you don't, this is a good place to start. All right, so when you download the file, it's going to start something like this, and it's going to say, open up the external reference palette or ignore the unresolved reference files. This is looking for something for the title block, likely an image of MVCC. If you need help with this in terms of making the final title block have an image in it, I can help. For right now, though, we're just going to hit ignore. Right, so ignore that. And what we're going to start with today is we're going to get a map open here where we can go into Fredericton and we can select a building site. All right, so let's start by doing that. So underneath the insert option, all right, there's a little world over here called set location. And if this is turned off, you can just come up here and type in the keyword location or Google how to turn that on. All right, we're going to go from map. So we're going to select this. And it's now we have the ability to basically look through the world where we want to go. So we're going to type in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Hit OK. And now we have our city pulled up. So I'm going to drop the marker here. All right, so it's going to show where I am. I'm going to hit next. Now this next piece should talk about how the GIS coordination system works. I don't have a great answer for this other than, there's so many here. This probably matters when you're doing surveying. For what we're doing, we don't really need to get that specific. I usually have used the Nova Scotia ones, right? So these are NS ones. Any of these will work, Nova Scotia. For the sake of purposes here, I am going to use this one. All right, I'm going to hit next. And so it says select the point of location where you want to start. I'm just going to go 0, 0, 0. Hit enter. It says specify the north direction angle. You do want it at 90. All right, so you'll see here it's trying to select this. I just hit enter. All right, so 90 would be straight up. And we should see the map populate. All right, so now we have Fredericton. Now we have our location, all right, picked out. And now you can really figure out what site you want. You can do it here in AutoCAD. My suggestion is, go to Google Maps, figure out where you want to go. The site that I chose for this building is up on Prospect Street as the example, which is the Second Cup. All right, so Second Cup is this site here. I'm going to open that and show you kind of what the finished drawing is. And I just want to talk, or I'm going to show you how to do that here in a second. But I just want to talk about, there is no right building here. I just want you to select any building. It can be along Prospect Street. It can be on the north side. What I hope is by going through this course is that you learn by drawing and going through these different buildings or your own building that there's things that you can change about it and there's things that are good about it. So there isn't a right or wrong answer. The reason I chose Second Cup was that I just felt as a small business, being near, Tim Hortons and Milltown, a bunch of other coffee shops, I kind of felt for Second Cup. It's kind of a small little business, and I was wondering what they could do in terms of making their business better. All right, so I'm just going to flick over to my building now. So mine is this one, right? So this kind of shows what the finished product looks like. I'm going to turn the map on for a second and just show what it looks like over top of. So I've drawn over top of this, and what I just want to show you again is just how you approach drawing your site, and then I'll go through the text and all that stuff. So if we go back to the assignment instructions, right, some of the things that I want you to do is you're going to draw the footprint of the building. So the footprint of the building is the outline. All right, so you'll see this blue line, and you'll see that there's kind of an offset here around the outside that's 600 millimeters from that. So I just traced, I started with the outside of the building here, then offset this one to go around the outside. I think this other line here is the roof plan. So the roof actually extends over top of the walls itself. So that's what I'm showing there. All right, the next thing I'm showing is the dimensions. So the drawing that I have is metric. So these dimensions are in millimeters, but you can also do yours in feet. I actually kind of do both. So I've got metric. Actually, let me just check this. So international units. So yeah, these are millimeters. So I do have millimeter dimensions, but I also do the physical dimensions in feet. You can do square millimeters, square meters, square feet. I just find it's easier for me to think in feet, so that's why I have it. All right, so I have the dimensions, and that's the exterior of the building, so I have those two. Here again, I've just said the roof awning surrounds the building. That's why I have this little external mention. You also need the total area of your building. All right, getting the total area of the building, I'm just going to scroll up here and show you how to do that. If you come over here under the Home tab, underneath the Measure, right, you can grab your area and area. All right, so you're just going to snap this and get your general interior space. So it's not the roof line I want, it's the interior of the building itself that I want, right? And then once you get this all done, right, I'm going to hit total. You'll see down here it says area, right? So mine is a massive number because it's in millimeters. What I do is I take that dimension and then switch it to square feet. Again, you can just Google millimeters squared to feet squared, and then I write on top approximate square footage of the building. Label roadways, streets around the building. So once you kind of have this all traced out, all right, so you trace around the outside of the building, again, your parking lot. Okay, so I'm just zoomed out here. So you can see here I've labeled the streets, Prospect Street. If it's a really long street, again, I label it on both sides. If there is an intersection, label the intersection just so I know where it is, and you obviously know where it is too. The last thing on the instructions is adding a north arrow. I've kind of labeled it down here on the south end. Let me turn the map off so we can see. So if I go into geolocation, I'm going to turn the map off. All right, so it's there. So you can kind of see what I'm looking for in terms of the site. One of the big things I'm looking for, guys, is when you're drawing your building is anything that's going to impact your site. And impact means like, we're going to learn about factors like wind and sun and those sorts of things. So if the sun was going to be, say, coming around the building, it's going to be on the south side like this. Is there anything around your building that would potentially be impacted by the sunlight or the wind? What we'll learn is the wind generally comes from this direction down, coming out of the west going east. This building over here has some impact there. And I'm just kind of drawing this too, just to show that this might have some impact there. So really getting a full site, not just your building and just the parking lot, kind of beside it. With Prospect Street, there's really nothing on the other side that's going to impact my site. Okay, so these are all low-lying buildings. There's no big trees or anything over here that I have to worry about. But if I was drawing, say, this house and all the trees here would have some impact on this house. And obviously We're not drawing houses, we're drawing commercial buildings, but I just want to show that as an example. Right. After that, gang, let me turn this off. The next is doors and windows. So in the plan view, so I've kind of done a side view of the building. Now, in my example, I've just done the one elevation. What I'm asking for you is to do north, south, east, west of that. Here you'll see I've labeled the west side of the building, and this is a viewpoint 1. So if I come back to my building, here's number 1. This is the west side of the building, and so I'm showing that. AutoCAD, the way we show that is we draw a bubble, all right, and then just make a little triangle on the outside, and you can kind of trim that if you want. So this was just, I started with a circle, and then I added text bubble or text number 1, put it inside, and then just drew a little arrow. You can draw an arrow too or something like that, but if you can draw it like this, these section bubbles are quite common, and you just have to put that on the outside of your building. On the planned elevation, I've added where the windows exist. And again, these are blocks you can get up on Brightspace as a template. So wherever there's windows on your building all the way around, you're going to put them in. I've just shown it as an example on the west side, on that side. So I've added doors and windows to where they need to go. The window sizing, the way we're going to do that is you can go into like Google Earth and look at the physical site here. So I've snipped some images to kind of show how long things are. So the way we can do that is if you go into maps, and if you go to your site, so here's second cup. So I can drop my Google guy down. All right, so here I can visually see how far everything is. Now in this view, I can't, so if I right click my mouse, I can't measure anything from this. So I'll show you in a second how to go to Google Earth, and you can actually go to Google Earth and measure things. But you can, if you want to measure on the top view. So if I want, here I have a little circle, and so I can drag that and kind of get dimensions of my site here. So you see here, total distance 26.54 meters or 87 feet. That's how I can get measures from the top. If you need to get Google Earth, we just go Google, and then we put in Google Earth. Come up here. So these are approximations. They don't have to be exact, gang. So I'm not looking for, they should be roughly, I would say, right. But what I guess I'm getting at is we're using technology to help us estimate. If we were physically on the site, I would expect you guys could do this with a tape measure. We just don't have that here. So let me get out of here. So if we go into 3D mode, all right, so this is the building I'm looking for, all right? So what we can do here is we can get into measuring points, and it will do, for example, I can take distances here. So I can estimate how far they are using Google Earth. And I can get those dimensions and then translate that to window sizes and how long they are. And so what I did here is I just measured out this window bank. There is a little gap of the building here, which I'll show in AutoCAD right there. Just use your best estimation. If you have a couple of these, you could put glazing the whole way along. Really what I'm looking for is that you've gone and looked at the building, you've appropriately tried to put in the dimensions that are there as best you can. And here you'll see I put kind of approximate distances there. So that's what I'm asking for, both on the top view and on the basic elevations, okay? And yeah, you'll put doors all the way around and any windows that are there. And my suggestion is go on Google Earth. And if you want, you can snip images here. You can rotate around the building. Sometimes it can be hard to see what's in the back of the building. So if I come in here, 3D mode, So for example, this one I had a hard time trying to figure out. I believe there's a door there, kind of a back entrance, but sometimes you have to kind of take a couple looks at it, see if you can see it. And we're going for, these should look good. They should look like you've tried to do the best you can. Sometimes you can drop the Google Guide down to see if you can see anything. Here I can only go as far as in here. Weirdly, I can go as far as here. So I can actually go into Long and McQuaid. Sometimes, again, it's hard to figure out what's back there. So sometimes what I do is I'll zoom around here, go into 3D mode, and then just try to figure out what's there. I do know there is a door back here. It's the facility waste door, so you can kind of come out, and again, someone's going to put garbage away. I'm coming back to the instructions. So it says use bubble section, using bubble sections, use building section bubbles. All right, 1 to 4. So all the way around the building, you're going to have, say, 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't matter which side, doesn't matter what number. Like the number doesn't matter what's corresponding to the side, but you do need them all the way around. All right, similar to what I have here. Okay, and then where you have that section bubble, you have the side of that building drawn. Okay, so for that, we need height and width of each side, window locations, door locations, roof line. All right, so if there's a roof line, it's flat, or if it's sloped. And then any siding. So what I did is I drew this whole building, just, did some rectangles, and then afterwards here I put in a hatch, all right, a brick hatch in here, and just applied it to make it kind of look good, make it look stand out. And then I put the second cup sign, because they do actually have a second cup sign on the side, and I just kind of wrote that over the top. The height of the building can be a bit challenging. I'll show you how we tackle that. So in Google Earth, not Google Maps, but in Google Earth, down here at the bottom, right here, there's a number. So here you'll see it's 116. If I'm hovering over here, that's actually the vertical height. All right, so what I can do is if I take my mouse and I try to approximate the lower part of the building, it's at 116. And if I slowly go up, you'll see it's climbing, climbing, climbing. So it's about 120. So if I go a little bit higher, somewhere between 120, 121. So in other words, if we go to the base again, I sometimes do this a couple of times just to make sure, but 116, now if I keep going down, so 116 is where it starts. And if I go up, it kind of stops around 120. So it's about 4 meters. I estimated about kind of 16 feet high as the building height. That's, again, the best that we have right now. That's the best information we have. If we had to take measure, obviously we go do it, but that's my general overview of how to get the approximate height of the building. And so you'll see I put that here at 16 feet, 16 feet high. So I put my dimensions in linearly and vertically. The green text here really is for you guys. I kind of put this in. You don't need to have this green text on there. I did that just to have some data here to show how I did this. Other than that, guys, that's really it that I'm asking. Again, picking your site and going around and doing your best guess at getting the sides. Those are the tools I would use. Yeah, I would say if you have questions, let me know. Yeah, so that's everything. Okay, so let's take a look at the rubric for this assignment. So it begins with dimensioning and labeling. So making sure that I understand on the drawing any dimensions. Again, we're looking for the square footage, the width, and really the width and the length of the building site, and on the elevation plans, the height and the width of the building. So making sure that we have these dimensions labeled. And then on the site plan, making sure that, again, we have the square footage and then the sizings as well. CAD standards, layers, line weight, scale, text, etc. we are going to be staying. So this is where I was saying with the CAD standards PDF. Make sure you take a look at that up on Brightspace. But all my text size here in model space is it's either a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 of an inch. So title text is 1/4 inch, 1/8 of an inch for note text. Again, you would have got that from potentially Dominique, senior project, or from building systems before. Most of my text is metric, so if I click on this, you'll see up here it's I think it's a 317 millimeters or 634 if you're doing metric. As far as layers go, you can keep your layers. I'm fairly flexible with layers. I'll just briefly show you what I have for some. So these are the ones that I have. There are some like C Solar, C Dumpster, C Recycle. Those are ones that we don't have anymore. So just be aware of that. Next, clarity and organization. So clean, readable, well organized. Really with this one, gang, when you guys are doing this drawing, just the big one is that making sure that the section bubbles match where the elevations are, labeling what I'm looking at, west side of building, if this is north, this is, north, I suppose, south, east, west, just making sure that you've taken into account this. Right now, the drawing shouldn't be too busy. You're going to have your 4 elevations. If you want to put images in and details, that's fine. You can also put them on kind of a non-print layer. So if I turned it off, I wouldn't see it. Just trying to keep the clutter to a minimum. Again, section bubbles are really important here, okay? I've given you 10 marks for that. Make sure, again, that they're shown there. The big ones are the elevations and the accuracy of the building, making sure that this first go, it should look like a site. It should look like a building. You don't have to worry about layouts, okay? The layouts right now, you don't need to have anything done, so you can leave that alone. This is just a model space drawing. So making sure that it looks okay, that I can identify what the other buildings are, what your building is, what a parking lot is, those sorts of things. All right, if you guys have any questions, please ask, but that's the ask for the first assignment. So I hope to see some great stuff from you.